My name is Drew McCoy, and I am the producer on Titanfall.
We've noticed that each Titan has a markedly different silhouette in this game. Was that an intentional design move?
Yes, that was a huge effort to differentiate the Titans. The big reason was we wanted it so when you saw a Titan on the field, you immediately knew who that Titan was, what he was capable of, what his weaknesses were. It really makes combat have a lot more depth to it. You can kind of think of them like Street Fighter characters. You can have a lot of like back and forth and these really cool fights that aren't possible when they all kind of blend into one.
Absolutely. I like that analogy to Street Fighter. Could you say the same applies to their special moves? Certain ones are better against certain Titans and all that sort of thing as well?
We try and make their core abilities, like Scorch when he does the super ground pound and sends out the wave of thermite, we try and make that like the ultimate, like no matter what, you're going to do something devastating to another Titan. But they really do have plus and minuses on who they're fighting. So like Scorch, again, he's a good example. He's really slow and lumbering. So the way he's going to deal with fast players is not going to be ideal because he's all about, I think you're going to go over there, so I'm going to lay down my gas canister and then set it on fire. But once I've done that, I've got to reload my gun or I've got to wait for the cooldown. So he's actually somewhat better at fighting not so fast Titans. So there is a lot of balance at play there. But people have, in playtests, they seem to kind of gravitate towards different play styles, and it's cool to see how everyone plays them.
It's interesting then to continue that fighting game analysis. He's more of a zoner.
Yes, yeah, he definitely is zoning.
Is that why gendered Titans are introduced as well, to kind of like give it this depth of characterization?
Yes, so like Ion is a she. She's got a voice, she has a personality, she's very cold and calculating, whereas Scorch, he's really intimidating and menacing. It kind of goes with their abilities. And it's again, it's one of those things that people will gravitate to for either gameplay reasons or the feel of them.
Sort of a personal like affinity with them.
Yeah.
The original game was popular and saw a lot, but it did see sort of a lot of drop-off throughout the first year of its life. What's been done this time around to kind of give it more staying power, as it were?
So any game designer or developer wants people to play their game as long as possible. I would say people play Titanfall about as long as we would expect them to. It didn't drop off any faster than we expected. But we are actively trying to keep people around longer. So we're trying to make the game a deeper, more learnable experience where you can try and anticipate and predict what's going to happen. It's really fun when you can come up with like, okay, I'm going to try this and then see what happens. It's like you come up with a hypothesis and you test it, and was I right or wrong? And do that over and over and over and over. And eventually you're getting better. You're like whittling down the edges of it until you're like, I've got this down perfectly. And then there's a whole bunch more things for you to try as well. So we're trying to make it a game that you're reacting less to and trying to anticipate more.
On sort of the back of that, you've added stealth as a viable mechanic this time around. What prompted the decision to add that into a game that was so celebrated for its speed in the previous iteration?
So the grapple is actually where a lot of that comes from, which seems like a weird segue. But so we had Cloak in the first game, and it was tuned so that pilots could maneuver in the exterior spaces of a level without a Titan seeing them very well. Because as soon as a Titan would see a pilot, it's like, you're dead. So it's kind of like I got to get from this building to that building without getting stomped on. But in Titanfall 2, once we had the grapple in the game, we realized how awesome it was and how liberating and powerful it could be. We didn't want to be like, well, it's too good, guys. It's too much fun. We've got to turn it down. We kept it where it was and said everything else has to come up to this level. Okay. So now Cloak is really hard to see, lasts longer, and it was one of those things that I was really worried about. So I was like, man, if we don't make grapple worse, no one's going to use anything else. But what we've noticed in our playtests, because we'll do like a take-home test where we all take a dev kit home for the weekend, we play multiplayer. After the first couple hours of the novelty of grapple, people will start trying other stuff, and they realize this is just as good in other ways. Like you have all these vectors of gameplay styles that you can do now, and they all stand up to each other. So it's really interesting to see how that's played out. The designers have done a wonderful job on balancing all this.
For sure. Towards the end of the demo, I chose Stim. And I thought, like, oh, health and speed boost, that's going to be useless. It's not. It gives you super mobility.
Yeah, it cranks the game not to 11, but to like 19. You rocket. It's great.
So it's interesting to hear that grapple was the kind of flashpoint for all this, and it was the thing that really changed the game. Is that what kind of slowed it down a little bit as well? Because you need the more like precision, I guess, for the grapple to work.
Well, the slowdown was not necessarily a response to the slowdown. It's a air quote slowdown. You still run at the same speed. You still get a momentum. Now it is more normalized. There was a lot of magic rules to wall running and double jumping and stuff that lets you gain almost unlimited speed. And unless you were super hardcore at the game, you never understood it. So now we're trying to make it learnable and understandable. But the grapple was actually implemented as a way to help new players. Like, oh, I didn't quite make that, let me grapple and then continue my wall run. And then turn into this thing that's like your Spider-Man, so how could we not make it awesome? So they all have these reasons that they've played off each other, and the game has come up in all these different ways, in responses to different things.
That's interesting. So you could say, like, you know, Titanfall 2 is the Spider-Man 2 of the Spider-Man franchise.
Yeah, hopefully.
That's cool. And what's your personal favorite element of the multiplayer so far?
For me, it's the fact that we've made multiple playstyles feel valid. Titanfall 1, to me, I got into a rut, and I'd do the same thing, same loadout, same everything every time. Whereas when I play Titanfall 2 for an extended period of time, like every round or two, I'm making a new loadout, I'm trying something else, I'm trying to level up this gun so I can get that attachment, or I'm doing this or that. And I feel like the game is offering me more stuff to do without it being just like, oh, well, here's a bunch of guns that are all the same, just go get camos for them. Like, I'm actively making different choices with the loadouts in my Titan and how I'm going to attack enemies, or am I going to defend, like all these things that my brain is doing different stuff every round.
And the game modes as well seem really geared towards that and towards the kind of allowing the player to really experiment in specific niches.
Yes, absolutely. We want people to feel like they could find their spot in the game, and then maybe, oh, I'll try on this one, I'll try this one, and spend more time in the game feeling like they're getting better at it.
Absolutely. Despite it being called Titanfall, I really enjoyed the pilot versus pilot.
It's a good mode.
It's a really good mode.
It's a good mode. Okay? We've done some cool things where you can see where other pilots are spawning without it feeling like you're cheating. Because what you end up having is this kind of like push and pull, because these maps are huge because they're meant to hold Titans, but now you only have pilots. We got to try and congregate them. So it's almost like forced spawn camping without it feeling cheap. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to force your way to where the enemies are spawning, and then once you've gotten in close enough, we actually change their spawn zone. So now the kind of, you know, the fight kind of just meanders around the map around these spawn zones. It's really unique. It's cool. It has a good feel to it. So Titanfall 2 releases on October 28th on both PS4 and Xbox One, oh, and PC.